Welcome, listeners, to today's episode of the Black Business Roundtable. I am your host, Doug Blacksher, broadcasting to you live from the city of Diversity, Oakland, California. As of the time of this broadcast, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, nominated by President Biden, is confirmed as of today. The Women's Council of Associated Real Property Brokers hosted a free event and brunch today at my favorite restaurant, Soul Slice, featuring fellow podcast host Kamal Hubbard Esquire. The Brunch and Learn event was held today with Kamal Hubbard as he discussed blockchain and cryptocurrency and the effect on the real estate industry. I would suggest you check his website page, kamalhubbard.com, to learn more. I have a few comments today on what I call the political corner. Last night, we had our monthly meeting with the Community Policing Advisory Board and the Alameda County Democratic Central Committee. Audience, as I've shared with you, it's time to start highlighting politicians who are and are not doing their jobs representing all their constituents instead of corporate America. Housing, Alameda County Housing Secure Emergency Relief Assistance Program is under extreme pressure to release money that's needed for tenants and landlords, and specifically Black and brown landlords who are up in age and dependent on those dollars needed to pay not only their mortgages, but their retirement. Second, the Community Policing Advisory Board Chair, Creighton Davis, we had an explosive meeting discussing how Black and brown people are treated differently and examining how white people need to understand and not understand the difference in the interaction between police and Black and brown people and white people. It was very explosive. We discussed how until we train our police, our law enforcement, that the interaction that they have should be consistent with all people. Share the following hashtag, Stop School Bullying Crane County TX 2022, and bring attention to the plight of this mom trying to help all students of color at this school, especially that the NAACP and the feds are involved. Special thanks to our sponsor, Chef Carter Lewis of Soul Slice Restaurant and Catering in Oakland, California. My auntie Esther Harris, my second mom, joined us today. And Dr. Ashley, it was an amazing event. Mr. Kamal Hubbard outlined and educated people who knew nothing about blockchain and cryptocurrency. He was on point, concise, and educated. The Women's Council of Associated Real Property Brokers under President Tam Willis. Visit Chef Carter Lewis of Soul Slice Restaurant and Catering in Oakland, California. Spring has sprung and summer will be here before you know it. Have you booked your spring summer catering yet for your upcoming events? Mother's Day, May 8th, 2022, Memorial Day, May 30th, 2022, and Father's Day, June 19th, 2022, and for my daughter out there, don't forget your dad, because I'd love for you to take me there, and that's my daughter. And June graduation planning is starting now. Located at 5849 San Pablo Avenue, Oakland, California, 94608. Website soulslice.com. Phone number 510-879-7689. Tell them that the Black Business Roundtable sent you. Magnolia Engineering and Construction for their continued support. And we congratulate Tammy Willis on being a minority woman-owned engineering and construction firm. Visit her website at magnoliaengineeringandconstruction.com to learn more about Tammy Willis. Boy, that sister is just knocking it out of the park. Being on the BART board, Bay Area Rapid Transit, being president of the Women's Council of Associated Real Property Brokers. And I was at the prayer breakfast, and let me give you some audience. It was truly amazing. We had city council people there, Carol Fife, Treva Reed, Lauren Taylor, and Vice Mayor and Councilwoman at Large, Rebecca Kaplan. It was an all-star lineup with guest speakers and prayer breakfast leader, Pastor Maria Ream. It was an outstanding event. Lord have mercy. When she got through preaching, I started teaching. Today's show highlight. Tonight, we will have an update on Michael Thrash and driving while black in Taylor County, Texas. Listen up, people, because this could happen to any of us or to someone you care about. If this story angers you as much as it did myself and other members of our audience, listen up and use your social media to bring attention to this story and share the hashtag driving while black, Michael Thrash, Taylor County, TX, and TX is for Texas. And this broadcast link, along with the original broadcast link from October 24th, 2022. We also want to mention and remind our audience about Carlton and the efforts to raise money to hire the legal defense firm to press for an appeal for Carlton, and we will reshare info later today. Our guests today include, girl, you know I'm finna say it now. Hold on, hold your breath, audience. Our weekly own Dr. Ashley Coleman, tenured. You go, girl. Tenured and immediate past department chair, assistant professor of psychology at University of the West. Welcome, Dr. Ashley.
Thank you.
2 weeks ago, girl, I was squeezing my ball and I had my stick in the other hand. I was doing a bunch of things. My hands are strong tonight. Our special guest will include Michael Thrash, originally from Oakland, California, but now in Lubbock, Texas, and experienced driving while black in Taylor County, Texas. On our 10/24, and that's October 24th, 2021 podcast. Guest Matt Hawkins Esq, attorney representing Michael Thrash of Lubbock, Texas. And let me do a sidebar. Matt, you are an attorney that understands the oath that you took to represent all people. And we respect you and we appreciate your valuable experience on this show. Thank you, Matt Hawkins Esq, attorney representing Michael Thrash of Lubbock, Texas. Janani Ramachandran, Esquire, will return later in April, as this weekend she kicks off her campaign April 9th. Time, Saturday, 12 to 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and Diamond Park, 3860 Hanley Road, Oakland, California. She is running for District 4 in Oakland, California. New website, Janani4, and that's FOR, Oakland.com, and her new Instagram at Janani the numeral 4, Oakland. Now for the national political highlights in several elections. Have you moved to Georgia recently? Have you registered to vote? Husband, father, and a patriot. He is a Georgia Democrat running for Congress to unseat, keep contributing people so he can out fundraise Marjorie Taylor Greene. And for those of you who don't know Marjorie Taylor Greene, I can't say enough about her. So I humbly ask that you Google Marjorie Taylor Greene, and that's MarJorie Taylor, Taylor, Greene, Greene. This woman is making a spectacle of Georgia. And we all know how Georgia has progressed over the last 30 or 40 years. Learn more on Instagram at Marcus4, and that's the number 4, Georgia, or Marcus' website at Marcus4, and that's FOR, Georgia.com. His yard signs are ready. Knock on doors and phone banking today through May 30th, 2022. Get Marcus Flower merch and meet Marcus Flower May 10th, 2022. Cedartown, Georgia, from 2 to 4 p.m., and that is East Coast time. Visit his website for details. Hashtag One Georgia, and that's ONE Georgia. Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock, a Democrat, helped flip Georgia blue, along with Senator John Ossoff, is running again for the U.S. Senate. He is a pastor, advocate, Savannah born and raised, and Morehouse College alumni. Learn more on Instagram at Raphael Warnock or at his website, Warnock4, and that's FOR, Georgia.com. And once again, his hashtag is One Georgia, and one is ONE. Stacey Abrams, a Democrat and woman of color, is running to unseat Republican Brian Kemp of Georgia. He's a governor, and to quote Stacey Abrams, opportunity in our state shouldn't be determined by zip code, background, or access to power. Learn more on Instagram at Stacey Abrams or her website, StaceyAbrams.com. And once again, her hashtag is One Georgia, and that's ONE Georgia. My sister, Val Deming, a Democrat, is running for the 2022 Florida Senate seat. If you would like to stay updated to Team Deming, text the word JOIN to 77076. This woman of color and former Orlando police chief is seeking to unseat Republican Little Marco Rubio in Florida. You ready, Dr. Ashley? This is my therapy in itself. Little Marco, pack your little bags, put your little Kid Mart tennis shoes on, and scurry on up out of there, as Trump told you for 4 years. Scurry on up out of there. I love saying that. Learn more on Instagram at Val Deming or her website, valdeming.com. And now, the news of the day. Our doctor, Ashley, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug, and a special greeting to all of our listeners from sunny Los Angeles. I know the Bay Area is having nice weather, and we're in the 90s here, so we're just enjoying this kind of preview of summer. But again, greetings to our listeners, and especially Donnie Glover, who jumped in the comments. So, hey, Donnie, while you were reading our political news, Doug, so we definitely want to honor him as well. So, on this news of the day, which again is always courtesy of the Equal Justice Initiative, April 7th, and let me get the year, 1927, there was a Ku Klux Klan revival in Evergreen, Alabama, a big tent meeting at the Presbyterian lot, open to public, everybody invited, ladies especially. So this is the headline of the newspaper. So again, on April 7th of 1927, the Ku Klux Klan held a series of revival events at a white Presbyterian church in Evergreen, Alabama. For weeks prior, newspapers advertised the recurring events planned to last 2 weeks and encouraged the white community members, especially white women, to participate in celebrating white supremacy on the church's grounds. Beginning at 7 p.m. on April 7th, people from Evergreen and the surrounding areas gathered at the Presbyterian Church to participate in this revival. And the program's events included lectures that melded scripture and the teachings, in quotes, of the KKK, titled Daniel's Vision of the Ku Klux Klan and Chalk Talks on Biblical Features. And again, the series of events ended on April 17th. And it's just what I really appreciate from this write up is it goes into discussion of how religion, specifically, um, white churches have played a critical role in supporting white supremacy in America and the messaging behind that. And it continues on to talk about for decades, white churches across the country barred Black clergymen and advocated and upheld the institutionalization of Jim Crow segregation in the U.S. And in many cases, congregation and clergy membership of churches included white people who openly advocated for and participated in Klan activities and violence. And there's also, I want to again encourage our listeners to visit calendar.eji.org because there actually is a photograph in black and white and what's supposed to be a pulpit. And there are approximately, I can eyeball about 30 members of the Ku Klux Klan in white robes. And behind them is a sign that says, Jesus saves. So I know in America, in the Black community, there's just been discussion about Christianity and its roots on this side of the diaspora with regard to the function of it, the purpose of it, the spreading of white supremacy. So just seeing this photograph is really eye opening. But I just want to encourage again and thank the Equal Justice Initiative for publishing this calendar of events that aren't always easy to look back on, but it's important for us to know our history so that we can make informed decisions about our present and future.
Dr. Ashley, as always, every time you talk, it makes me take several deep breaths. Woosah.
Yes.
Woosah. Audience, for those of you who have challenges mentally, I've stressed from day one. As you would have a broken leg a broken arm, you would go seek the help from a doctor. If you had a toothache,
Mm-hmm.
cavity, or mouth problems, you would go see a dentist. When you have mental issues, go see a doctor of psychology. Dr. Ashley, you bring so much to the show.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Doug.
And once again, we want to take a break for our sponsorship. Dr. Ashley, please take it away.
Absolutely. And just before that, Doug, I just had two comments before I do, and just I'm keeping my comments brief on Therapeutic Thursday, but I just want to highlight to our listeners, we're getting ready to hear a story of resilience again. So we know that this is the second time our guest has been on our show, and we'll get to hear updates from him and his legal representation. But one of the things that stuck with me from his first visit, and then also from this week with Justice Jackson's confirmation, um, is the importance of one, keeping your eye on the prize. Two, when someone doubts you, like the resilience, even we talked about last week with our guests, mental resilience, and really thinking about yourself reaching the goal, even if it seems preposterous to other people. One video I saw recently during the deliberations and votes about Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation were about five politicians that highlighted her being the American dream. They highlighted her brilliance, her professional and personal accomplishments, her education, her stellar track record, and then all announced that they were not voting in support of her. Okay. Then what I also saw was a video of NBA player Giannis Antetokounmpo back maybe about 8 years ago when he announced, and this is before his growth spurt, that he wanted to be the MVP, and the news reporters laughed at him. For our basketball, aficionados, or even for those who aren't familiar, Giannis and his teammates of the Milwaukee Bucks not only won the NBA championship in 2021, but he also what is it a MVP and Finals MVP. And so, um, why am I bringing this up? Because again, tonight we're going to hear a story of resilience, of continued advocacy, and fighting against whether it's racism, whether it's prejudice, fighting against the discounting of one's abilities or whatnot, rising above challenges. And just in that resilience, keeping your eye on the goal, whether you're fighting for justice and you feel like you've been unfairly treated, unfairly incarcerated, unfairly sentenced, fighting for a position that you are rightfully qualified for, maybe even overly qualified for, but people don't want to accept that the brilliance comes in your package. Or maybe if it's even a long shot where you see the vision, but your now does not reflect your future. Hold on to that dream. Think of the self-talk, think of the resilience. So that's just I'm so I'm celebrating underdog status as I continue to celebrate my own promotion and recommendation as tenured and associate professor, rising associate professor. But I just see I've seen so many videos and first person accounts of people being counted out, and yet they rise above. So rise above, listeners. And if you're rising above, celebrate yourself and encourage yourself along the journey. Sometimes we just wait to get to the finish line to celebrate, but keep that momentum up, and celebrate and honor yourselves for rising above. So I just wanted to share that, and then definitely want to honor our sponsor. Thank you, Mr. Donnie Glover. Again, it's so great to see you watching our show. We're so grateful for your platform of blackusa.news. And listeners, be sure to turn in. We have wonderful programming. We're going to highlight shows throughout our sponsorship segments, but one is Chap and Friends on Mondays, Party Marty Let's Talk on Tuesdays. Doug, I know you like to shout out Soul Slice a certain way, a little Mark Rubin. I get so excited for Party Marty Let's Talk. Um, Again, thank you to our first sponsor, Tammy Willis of Magnolia Engineering and Construction, whose vision is to further the presence of Black women in the construction and engineering industry through key partnerships and building contracts in the municipal, government, and transportation sectors. And an invitation to join our advertising family. Please send us an email enclosed with your company name, address, website, phone number, and social media page, and address that email to bbrt2021 at hotmail.com. Also, um, again, Doug, you highlighted this at the beginning of the show, but we want to remind our audience of last week's story of Carlton and Raleigh, North Carolina. Again, another disheartening story of a young, educated, newly rising, successful Black entrepreneur that just received a life sentence in February 2022. And after sitting in jail due to COVID delays in his day in court for just over 2 years. Please listen to the backstory on Carlton. Again, we um, introduced Carlton's story last week during our podcast. And also, please see the links in the show's description for more information. And Doug, I want to give you a moment just to acknowledge your relationship with Carlton.
Dr. Ashley, audience, it's critical that we understand. And those of you who are watching the show today, I will fight for you if you are Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, or other. But let's focus in on Mr. Carlton Craig Harris, CCH. Young brother trying to get his life together. And let me move past that. He has his life together, has a successful business in North Carolina, and defending not only himself, but his business and his patrons against a person that the court documents concluded that he was going to his car after threatening to kill Carlton Craig Harris. Kill him. Defended himself. The judicial system of North Carolina sentenced him to life with no possibility of parole. I am disheartened, and I humbly ask that we follow this story until this young man is released and made whole by the Correctional Institution of North Carolina. I've met him several times. Outstanding young man. I was thoroughly impressed. So please stay tuned as we update you on how we're going to get this young man released and be the shining example of how we show the best of America, not the worst. This is a humanitarian issue right now. This is a humanitarian issue. This young man has demonstrated to be a hardworking, college-educated Black man who has been railroaded to prison. And I'm not going to go into detail because it hurts me. It hurts me to see what's going on in North Carolina. So stay tuned and please donate, audience, to his legal fund for his appeal, for his freedom. Thank you, audience. Thank you. Dr. Ashley, I get speechless every time I think about what's going on. And I want to say, please listen to the backstory of Carlton via last week's podcast and see the links in the show description. And if you are moved by this young man that I personally know and have known since his childhood, won't you please donate so his mother and father can reach the $20,000 goal to secure the best research legal defense firm to press for an appeal for Carlton. The link to his YouTube video and PayPal can be found in the online show description on YouTube and Facebook. We will be bringing you updates as we get them regarding status of Carlton and donations, which have reached $3,500 as of yesterday. And we thank you, audience. We thank you. And I'm going to do a sidebar, Dr. Ashley. Audience, show America that we're fighting for Americans. Show America that we're fighting for America. Audience, we ask you for your prayers for Carlton and his mother and father. I ask you, if you were moved by his story, to pass on the video link and, if possible, donate, as any amount is welcome to assist Carlton's parents in their appeal efforts. He was brought up in church, so a national Christian prayer warrior. Family, Carlton needs your support via prayers, letters, and cards of encouragement and donations of any of these are welcome. I got to do a sidebar, Dr. Ashley. Just 2 weeks ago, we had two men who both were serving life imprisonment, fought their cases, and are now productive men of society. And that shows you, audience, that we need to reevaluate our judicial system as it relates to the incarceration of Black and African American men and women in this country. We also understand there was a victim here that died, and we acknowledge the pain that the family also feels from yesterday, today, and forever. There tomorrow. Thank you, audience. Carlton's family, let me be perfectly clear here. As we are right on time, Dr. Ashley, I am a product from East Oakland, California, United States of America. When you're young, whether you're Black, Asian, Hispanic, or other, you're challenged by your environment and by the conditions of your environment. The audience, Carlton Harris is a victim. And I humbly ask that you reach out, send a card, if it's change or if it's paper, send a donation so we can get this young man released and he can get back to society and be like the other two young men who have dedicated themselves to be successful and be an asset to their community. And that was Sabir Lockett of Fame and John Arthur Jones III of Boss. Thank you, audience. We really appreciate you. Now, Dr. Ashley, can you give another sponsorship break? And then we're going to immediately move into our guest today, which is going to update us on driving while black. Thank you, Dr. Ashley.
Absolutely. And I'm, Doug, well said. And I'm still thinking about our new vocabulary word or phrase of returning citizens that Sabir taught us last week. And again, thank you, Sabir. And I'm holding on to that and using it as well. And so, again, thank you, Mr. Donnie Glover of BlackUSA.News. And be sure to tune in to Black USA Crypto News with Kamal Hubbard on Fridays, as he knows all about blockchain and cryptocurrency. It sounds like it was a wonderful event recently. Please visit Chef Carter Lewis of Doug of
So, wait a minute, Dr. Ashley. He had black eyed peas, grits, sauteed shrimp, hot wings, spicy vegetables, and he had the peach cobbler pizza. Girl, I am still full. I had to tell you that because when I leave here, I'm going to run around the building a couple times because I ate so much. And I said, you know what? I'm going to be hungry later. So I took a bowl with me.
Oh, it sounds good. Oh, Chef Carter, we miss you. Spring has sprung and summer will be here before you know it. So many events and holidays coming up. Please consider him for your birthdays. There's Mother's Day, there's Easter, Father's Day. So, again, time to celebrate and the missed opportunities over the past 2 years in this pandemic. Located in the heart of Oakland at 5849 San Pablo Avenue. Website is soulslice.com. Phone number 510-879-7689. Tell them Black Business Roundtable sent you. And also to learn more about our other sponsor, Ms. Tammy Willis, owner of Magnolia Engineering and Construction, visit the website magnoliaengineeringandconstruction.com. The company wants to be a part of the beautiful, growing community of Oakland, California. Connect with the company on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And finally, if you would like to join our advertisement family, send us an email to bbrt2021@hotmail.com. Please enclose details about your business and its social media page, and we will be in contact with you.
Dr. Ashley, I'm looking at the time. I'm looking at the script. We are on point today. And audience, briefly, I want to acknowledge all those companies out there that genuinely give an opportunity to all businesses. As I say, I advocate for black and brown woman-owned business too. Black and brown women-owned business too. I advocate for any business that creates equity and equality in private and government contracting opportunities. Thank you. And those of you don't, I'll be talking to you soon too. Now, let's welcome our guest, Michael Thrash, and his attorney, Matt Hawkins, back to the Black Business Roundtable for an update on this case. Dr. Ashley, please take it away.
Absolutely. So, listeners, we ask for your continued support of Michael Thrash. It just takes a few clicks on your social media platform to post hashtag driving while black Michael Thrash Taylor County TX. And again, that TX stands for Texas. And tag the city of Abilene and Taylor County, Texas mayor's office, as well as national and local news outlets. Attach our podcast link from his original appearance along with his attorney, Matt Hawkins Esquire, from the October 14th, 2021 episode. And that link is listed in today's podcast description for reference. Doug?
Dr. Ashley, I just got a text message that Michael Thrash's attorney is having a little bit of problem
Okay.
logging in, so I'm going to send him a text with the login information. But
No,
Dr. Ash,
I think he's
oh,
coming
there
in.
he is. Oh, let me tell you, let me tell you something, Mr. Matt Hawkins Esquire. We at the Black Business Roundtable, and I am a lifetime member of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. We welcome you back on the show.
Mhm.
We appreciate the hard work that you're doing to create equity and equality to
Mhm.
all people. Sir, thank you for coming back on the show today.
Yes.
You're welcome. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Look at that. I got over my technical hardship from the last.
Audience, let me be clear. When this show started back,
Mhm.
and Dr. Ashley and Mr. Matt, we are coming up on our 1 year anniversary.
Wow.
This
Congratulations.
show, oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. This show is designed on highlighting it's not about black or white, it's about humanity, it's about equal justice and equality. Can you update our audience on what is going on down there in Texas? And Dr. Ashley, Matt, let me be clear here. We have been contacted from many different people all across this country, but we
Mhm.
specifically are having a lot of calls from Texas. Mr. Matt Hawkins Esquire, can you update us on this case and what the heck is going on down there in Texas? And I didn't bring my hee-haw hat on, but next time I'll have it ready for you. Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
You know, I should have had a cowboy hat today. With the case we have right now, it's still pending. We were, I guess, I want to say scheduled for a trial this past Monday, but it didn't go. It was it's reset. It's going to be reset apparently to June. I'm not saying they didn't want to set it in May, but I have another trial setting in May, so they're telling us sometime in June will be our date. So it's kind of status quo. Nothing's really changed. No offers other than the original deferred offer that we received on it, and so just more so just preparing is really all we've been doing. And then, same thing. Mr. Thrash has been reviewing the discovery as well. And just basically assisting me with preparation to get his suppression hearing prepared and ready. And then hopefully after that, either dismissal or we'll proceed to trial on it.
Mr. Matt Hawkins Esquire, we want to be sure, as you represent Michael Thrash, you are given the opportunity to speak first and give an overview of this case. So if you would, please give our audience, in case they missed our previous show with you both on October, and I believe I see the 24th, but I think it was the 14th. October the 14th, 2021, a chronological overview of events through our October 14th podcast with you. And please feel free to take your time so that those listening can get a full understanding of events as we can start segment 2 at the 5 o'clock hour. And let me be clear, audience, this man here, Mr. Matt Hawkins, we need your support. We need you to call down. We need and any information that you can give this audience that we can pressure this government body that continues to deny Mr. Michael Thrash his civil human rights as an American citizen. Thank you, sir.
All right. Just kind of a recap with Mr. Thrash, and I don't have the exact date in front of me, but basically, Thrash was driving driving down the interstate on I-20, right into Sweetwater, there's a license plate reader. It looks like it's just a radar that lets passerbys think that, I mean, it tells you your speed, but it's a hidden license plate reader that then generates those license plate numbers, sends them to a database, and then if you were flagged or the vehicle you were driving in is flagged, and what I mean by that is, and in this specific case, the vehicle that Michael was driving, the owner of that vehicle had an arrest for a drug charge that subsequently was dismissed. And so the only thing this lady didn't do, she did not expunge the case. But honestly, with whoever's holding that database with the license plate readers, I can't say that an expungement would even take that information out of that system. I don't know. But be that as it may, the license plate gets flagged as a known drug dealer driving the vehicle, or the known drug dealer's vehicle, even though that case was dismissed and she is not a known drug dealer. But however, that initiates law enforcement in Nolan County to engage. And so they dispatch sheriffs and law enforcement, and they get up to Mr. Thrash, and they continue to follow him for quite some time. And this is what I surmise, because I don't have, and I say this just because he was not pulled over in Nolan County, and so I surmise that they could not find a reason to stop him. So they then radioed ahead to Taylor County to intercept Mr. Thrash, his vehicle. And so same thing, they follow him as soon as he crosses into Taylor County. They follow him all the way through the county, almost to the other side of the county, about 1 mile before the county line. And that is when they initiated a stop. And we are going to, our position is that it's an illegal stop. It's a bad search, bad stop. But they pull him over, and then they determine that they're going to try to find a way to get into his truck, because they don't have any reason other than the initial reason for the stop, which they obviously see he's not the owner of the vehicle. And so, he cooperates. He's very cooperative, gives his license to him. And then they immediately treat him as if he's a criminal. And they, from the get-go, it starts out bad. They get him out of the vehicle. They say that a drug dog hit on his vehicle, and they continuously, say they smell marijuana later on. And then you hear the officers themselves start articulating. After they search the vehicle, they find that Mr. Thrash had money, cash denomination, and they decide to devise a plan to take his money. And you hear the sheriffs in the background, and there's plenty of audio footage, but it basically states that they're going to scrape the money to get drugs off the money so they can have a reason to seize the money. And they take his money, they take his concealed handgun license, they take his handgun, they take his pocket knife, and then they send him down the road. They don't arrest him. They tell him he's going to be under arrest for possession of narcotics and money laundering, and then unlawful carrying a weapon, because he's a lawful license to carry holder. But if you're accused of a crime and officers do that, then at that point, then it's a Class A misdemeanor for unlawful carrying a weapon. And so they take his money, his guns. They try to say that the reason for him having that money, he shouldn't have it. He told them where he'd gotten it from a settlement, an injury settlement. And then at that point, they don't believe him. They want to take the money because they have everything to gain from it. That money goes to that department, and they get to use it internally if they are successful in seizing that money. And so in this case, they file a civil forfeiture on his money. And then once we file an answer, he's indicted, a very short time afterwards.
Mr. Matt Hawkins, can you give us a little background of Mr. Michael Thrash? Now, I ask you that because I've known Michael Thrash since I was in elementary school. And audience, let me be clear here today. Michael Thrash is one of the most squarest guys that never gotten in trouble in the history that I known him from elementary to high school and beyond. But Mr. Matt Hawkins, can you elaborate on that, sir? Thank you.
I can. When I met Mr. Thrash, he came in for a consultation, and kind of told me what was going on, and the story seemed outrageous, and of course, as I go through with my clients, I try to get their background, their history, and even more particular criminal history, because when you've got trouble and you have a past, that often can be used against you to either enhance punishment or different things for ranges of punishment that could affect him. And Mr. Thrash was squeaky clean, and also to
and Mr. Hawkins, can you expand on squeaky clean so our audience will understand? When I say square audience, I grew up in East Oakland, California, and I wasn't square, but I wasn't round either. So can you just elaborate on that just a little bit, Mr. Hawkins?
I can. Mr. Thrash, because he had a clear background, he was able to actually have a concealed carry handgun license, and I hate to even say this, but it is, in my view, it is true. You don't see very many Black individuals that actually are able to avoid the criminal justice system, or if you want to call it that, and they usually will have some kind of crime or something on the record, and they can't get that, and it's rare to see. And so when Michael came in and said, "Man, I've got a handgun license. I'm clean." He truly is. He's, no background, no criminal history, nothing that he was accused of, and he just didn't deserve to be treated the way he was treated, and it's common if you Google, and I do call it highway robbery, but if you Google, you can see that this isn't the first time, and Mr. Thrash isn't the first victim to this. There's a ton of people out there, citizens that are every day that the law enforcement determines they have too much money on them, and they will take their money and they seize it, and it happens more times than not. And so, it's crazy to see, but Mr. Thrash is amazing. He's an outstanding citizen. He's a good guy, and like I said, it shouldn't have happened to him.
And Dr. Ashley, I'm sorry for kind of taking the show over, but let's be clear here, audience. We have a Black man with a clean record who not only was a truck driver, and to be a truck driver, because I have a Class A license, you have to be able to pass a drug test. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to pass a background test. And in addition to him having a Class A license and a successful career as a commercial driver with a clean record, he, from my understanding, worked for the correctional department. Can you elaborate on that, sir?
I believe that's right. I don't have it in front of me. I think he's mentioned that before, but that was one of his career options. I think before becoming an actual truck driver. So he's, like I said, he's had a clean history, clean record, and I mean, forever. And so, yeah, he's clean.
Dr. Ashley, before we ask the next question, and is Michael Thrash backstage? Michael Thrash backstage. If he's not, Dr. Ashley, can you share with our audience the psychological effect that this not only have on Mr. Michael Thrash, but other Black men and women who are clean, who work their butts off to make sure that they abide by the laws of this country and are railroaded by these Rough Rider law enforcement outlaws? Thank you, Dr. Ashley.
No, thank you for the opportunity. I think it can be terrifying to be pulled over. And I think also we're going to have Michael Thrash come in a few minutes, but it can be terrorizing to be pulled over, especially dependent upon one's historical interaction with police. And we have to understand that not everyone's baseline is seeing police officers as serving and protecting, but as individuals that may or may not use their power as weapon depending upon what type of day they've had. So this idea of, again, it invokes terror, and it can actually trigger trauma. And so one of the things, hi Michael, so good to see you. One of the things that I want to highlight that Mr. Thrash said last time that stuck with me was he was coping in the moment and thinking, how can I survive this moment? And as we've seen many interactions publicized between citizens and police officers, this idea of how to manage emotions when one may be having a trauma response in order to be able to focus and hear the auditory commands and then comply with those commands, understanding through video representation that we've seen over the last few years, that even when you're complying, having to say, okay, I'm going to reach in my pocket now for my driver's license. I have a weapon on me, but I have a license to carry. I'm going to reach in my glove compartment. And all of that takes, when we talk about the psychological, first of all, we have our parasympathetic nervous systems and our autonomic nervous systems. They're at play there at that time, because the heart rate is racing, because the heart knows and is detected to recognize a threat. But you have to keep yourself under pressure so you can think through using your frontal lobe. I'm gonna get a little sciencey for a minute, bear with me. But your frontal lobe for your executive functioning that carries out plans and ideas. So Mr. Thrash was managing the firing of his nervous system, letting him know there's a threat, but cooling himself down at the same time to identify a plan, communicate that plan to someone else that was viewing him as a threat, and had the power to carry that out, and the burden of proof being on Mr. Thrash to kind of manage the emotions of not just himself, but multiple people, when we're not usually responsible for the emotions of other people. But somehow in society, when it comes to certain people with power, we're still putting the onus of responsibility on the person who's being stopped to manage the emotions of people with a split second, have an opportunity to make decisions that are very permanent. And so, Mr. Thrash, that stayed with me from last October. And wow, I just had to really, for our audience, let them know we have a survival technique. That's fight, flight, freeze, freak out. All of that is built in survival, and you managed a high level of emotional activation and yet remained in control to think of, how do I survive this moment? And I just want to close this by saying, to live to fight another day with the assistance of your attorney to fight for that justice. But that also involves being able to survive that stop on Highway 20, to be able to tell your story. So welcome back, both of you.
And welcome back, Mr. Michael Thrash. And let me just tell you this. There are cases, many cases, that you should be dead right now. Mr. Robert L. Harris, Esquire, a civil rights attorney, corporate attorney, and friend of the show, said that you exhibited textbook behavior of how to live and fight for another day. Be proud of yourself. Audience, let me be perfectly clear here. We have a situation in Crane County, Texas, where the Black Business Roundtable was able to work with a mom whose child was being bullied, and we got the NAACP, Miss Jessica Holliday, and the federal government to intervene in that. And Mr. Hawkins and Mr. Thrash, we are pushing the government to get involved in this case. So hang on, hang on. This is not going to be the Alamo. Calvary is right over the horizon. So don't give up. We are coming. Mr. Thrash.
How you doing?
How you doing? Welcome back to the show, sir.
Appreciate it.
How did you come to find Attorney Hawkins? And Mr. Hawkins, let me be clear here. For those of you who are listening down in Texas, Mr. Hawkins has exhibited the utmost desire to fight and find for the truth for all people. We welcome you back on the show and thank you for defending this man who I personally know to be a beacon. Now, wait a minute. We used to talk jokes and play the dozens. And audience, for those of you who know about Mike had to laugh on. Those of you who know about dozens, the dozens we used to back in high school and junior high, we used to talk about, do the mama jokes. But I've never known you to get into any trouble. So if they could choose you, the cleanest person who I've known since I started elementary school to mess with, that could be you or me or Dr. Ashley or any black or brown person in America. Mr. Thrash, can you let our audience know how you were able to find this outstanding attorney, Mr. Matt Hawkins, Esquire? Thank you, sir.
Well, actually, first off, I'd like to say thank you for having me here again. But I actually was telling a friend of mine about the situation, and she was the one who introduced me to Matt. She told me about Matthew, and the first time I talked to him, I felt more comfortable because I had already talked to a different attorney. But when I talked to Matt, the comfortability level, and I felt that he would really look out for me, and that's why I chose him.
Dr. Ashley?
Can I just say something that's so important again, Mr. Thrash, when we talk about your instincts and listening and how you're able to regulate. So you met with one attorney's screen and you felt comfortable with Mr. Hawkins, and that goes back to safety. When we've experienced any type of trauma or heightened stress, it's the first thing that's really important to do is reestablish a sense of safety. So you had been through an experience where you had been invalidated, not believed by individuals in power. So how much more important was it for you, again, understandably so, to know that you have someone actively fighting for you who first believed you as well?
That was one of the main things, because even though the first day I met with Matt, I told him about the story, and he listened, and I felt in my heart, just like anybody else, well, got to be something more to this. But he made me feel comfortable, and once he saw the body cam footage himself, then he realized, and he knew even that much more that what I was saying was the truth. And just recently, since the last show, I was able to actually see the body cam footage for myself, and I'm gonna be honest with you, that was worse to me than any other part of it, because it brought the whole thing. It made me angry again, and it's not a good situation. It just makes me feel bad because I still have that anxiety. If a cop is behind me, I'm trying to shake that so much because it's been 3 years of my life now. Next month this will be happening 3 years ago, and I'm trying to take control back, but at times it's difficult.
Mr. Thrash, I want to respond to that from a psychological perspective, but I just want to give, we're going to take a quick break for our sponsors.
Okay.
Because what you just said is so important and needs to be addressed without interruption. So let us just acknowledge our sponsors, because you're really bringing to light what it's like, the aftermath of surviving something traumatic. But again, thank you, Mr. Donnie Glover of BlackUSA.News, and be sure to tune into YouTube Donnie Glover's page for more insightful and informative programming. Also, like us on Facebook. Again, a shout out to Chef Carter Lewis of Soul Slice Restaurant and Catering in the heart of Oakland, California. Again, spring is here and it's time for the events, time to celebrate the Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthdays, as well as graduations. Don't wait. Make your reservations now by visiting the website soulslice.com or by telephone 510-879-7689. Again, tell them Black Business Roundtable sent you. A special acknowledgement to Magnolia Engineering and Construction, whose mission is to become the premier building and engineering resource for large-scale commercial and transportation building projects in the Bay Area and beyond. Our vision is to further the presence of Black women in the construction and engineering industry through key partnerships and building contracts in the municipal, government, and transportation sectors. And then finally, audience, if you'd like to join our advertisement family, please send us an email enclosed with your company details to bbrt2021@hotmail.com. Again, we're welcoming back Michael Thrash and his attorney, Matt Hawkins. And Michael, you just talked about the emotional aftermath, because when we go through something, there's a residue. And I like to call it the earthquake and then aftershocks. And one of the things that you actually confronted, just to put a label on it, is the re-experiencing and reliving of the event through that body cam footage. And when we're talking about acceptance of emotions, but grieving and stages of grief, that anger of, one, what you went through is real, and what you went through is real, and you have that validation from your attorney and others, but seeing it again and being confronted by the gross violation of power is infuriating for survivors. And we could be talking about, again, abuses of power, sexual assaults. I work in many different ways with clients, but again, we're just talking about being a survivor. And then, as you mentioned, this idea of what may come up, the thoughts that may come up if a cop car is behind you. All of these responses are normal, they're healthy, and they will subside over time. That's very possible. They're treatable.
Right.
But this is your body. Here we go again. Our bodies have a survival technique. And so when our car is broken into, we tend to lock it multiple times and check, because we know that a break-in is possible. Similarly, while you may have known what was possible until you went through that traumatic experience, there's not an unknowing, but it's about, okay, how do I manage this moment again? But it's treatable, it's possible. But I just want to, sometimes survivors can internalize that, like there's something I'm doing or not doing that I feel this way. No, it's just the reality, the complex reality of what you experience. So I just wanted to offer that to you and to the rest of the survivors that are listening to our shows. From whatever you've survived, our body speaks to us, and it's often to protect us.
Dr. Ashley, let me piggyback off of that. Audience, not only here in Oakland, Alameda County, state of California, but across the United States, Michael Thrash, what you have exhibited, the conduct that you exhibited, and I'm speaking from my personal feeling and also from a civil rights attorney who was on the show last time, who said a lot of men would have been dead. You did everything right, and they have apparently decided to do unlawful acts, in my opinion. And as I sit under this Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce, as I speak out to the NAACP, not only in Abilene, Texas, not only in the state of Texas, but in the United States of America. You are alive because of your actions. So I want to thank you for exhibiting what, even under the extreme circumstances, you are alive today because you are a beacon. Your character is a beacon of how we should conduct ourselves when dealing with law enforcement, whether it be good or bad interaction. And in my personal assessment, after talking to you and your attorney, after looking at all the facts, the NAACP and the Department of Justice and the feds need to be down there addressing the situation. So to that end, moving forward, so to Attorney Hawkins, from October 14th, 2021, can you provide what, if anything, has moved forward in this case through March of 2022, as we will get to April in our next question, because this has been going on for 3 years. They've stolen tens of thousands of dollars from this hardworking, never having a criminal thing in his record. What the heck is going on down there in Texas? And NAACP and the federal government, Department of Justice, I'm going to be pushing this, because this is a perfect example of what needs to be investigated as it relates to law enforcement going crazy or wild or out of control. Thank you.
I agree. The pandemic didn't help anything. It only pushed every case back. And I mean, I'm sure that, the DA's office in that area, as with any other, at least the towns that I've been in, they got rid of a lot of cases that were in their minds not that big a deal, or, could be, dismissed with, a little bit of court cost and go on down the road type deal. But the cases that weren't going to be able to settle, they're obviously in line to be tried. But, most counties also will try to get the inmates that can't get out of jail. They'll try to advance their cases first. Otherwise, if they didn't, those guys would be in jail forever waiting for their trial date. And so because of that, and because, Mr. Thrash is out on bond, his cases, it gets bumped frequently just because you've got higher level felony cases out there that are, and they're incarcerated. To that end, there's not really been anything new, on either side of his case. On the civil case, it's obviously stalled until we can have the criminal case. And then if we can get that resolved favorably, then we go and then we go fight our day in court to get his money back, which I want every bit of it back for him, every bit of it.
Now, audience, this is a classic case of government out of control. And this is a classic case of, we're going to make this man spend as much money as he can for legal fees or throw the towel in. So let me start off by saying that Mr. Michael Thrash and his attorney, Mr. Matt Hawkins. Audience, in case you missed it, Attorney Matt Hawkins provided the chronological order of how his client, Mr. Michael Thrash, experienced. Now, hold on, audience. Driving while black in Taylor County, Texas. We also discussed how client and attorney came together due to this case in, once again, driving while black in Taylor County, Texas. As of April 2022, you had a court date of April 4th, just this week. And I know you talked about it a little bit, but if you dive in a little deeper when I ask you, what was the outcome of your day in court, Mr. Thrash, as you have traveled approximately, and this is one way, audience, 165 miles one way for a court appearance that must be stressful driving into the county where all of this occurred. Can you talk about that, sir, just a little bit? Thank you. And attorney.
Well, actually, what I will tell you is this: since this case has been going on, I believe I've been down there 3 to 4 times, and out of those 3 or 4 times, there's only one time that I've actually went into the courtroom and even spoke to a judge. And I'll let my lawyer explain what happened this time, but we went down there, and I was there 15, 20 minutes and had to turn around and drive the 165 mile back. And it's still costing me in gas, and everybody knows how high gas is right now. So, I mean, it's everything is just costing me more and more money.
That's true. It's the bad thing about Mr. Thrash not living in that area is he does have to travel, and same as me as well. I don't live in Abilene. I'm 3 or 4 hours from that place as well. So we do have to drive there. Like I said, it's we don't want it delayed, but at the end of the day, it gets pushed, and so hopefully our next trial setting in June will be our date in court. So it is frustrating, but it's not atypical. I don't want to say that it's like that everywhere, but a lot of counties I've been to and a lot of cases I've had, you don't get a trial date set immediately. It gets bounced, and then you just have to wait until you're told, hey, you are going. So, hopefully we'll have all those issues resolved, and we'll actually get in front of a judge and have them hear our suppression issue.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to ask Attorney Hawkins, let me get this straight, because I know it sounds like there wasn't. I was hoping when you first admitted or stated that the April 4th date was changed to June, that it was delayed, that there was advance notice. But as you were speaking just now, it sounds like it was not advance notice and that this was just discovered on that same day. Can you clarify for me? Because
on our dockets, when Mr. Thrash was notified by his bonding company that it was a trial setting, of course he contacted me, and I didn't get any notices saying it was a trial setting. And normally we'll have a court or coordinator will call out and say, hey, your trial date is this day and be prepared. We didn't get that. So, when I showed up that morning and spoke with the coordinator, I thought it was at that point a docket call, and she corrected me and let me know it was an actual trial setting, but it wasn't going, and so at that point, we get reset to June. So it's, I think on stuff like that, I think that we have technology for Zoom, and like we're doing now. I don't understand on those type of cases and those type of instances, we're not going to have to be in front of a judge, and it's just a reset. Why we can't just do it on Zoom?
Right. So you have again, Mr. Thrash coming and confronting the emotions of returning to the scene of this incident, the emotional preparation that it takes in order to get ready to gear up for this, and then the letdown, I imagine, of not having that forward progress, or just the weight it's coming later. And I just want to hear from the both of you, what was that aftermath like emotionally, of just like, not today?
For me, it was just frustrating. I think Matt understood when I talked to him about it. I'm like, wow, it's like they just keep putting me off.
Wow.
Well, it sounds like to me that we have a county of Abilene, Texas gone wild. I say girls gone wild, Abilene County has gone wild. It sounds to me that there's been a great effort to do everything they can to make this man walk away from his hard-earned work money, and to break the back of another black man in America. Mr. Hawkins, the Black Business Roundtable commends you for supporting
There we go.
justice in America and not this buffoonery that's going on in Abilene, Texas. And let me be clear here today. I will be following up with not only the Texas NAACP, but I'm going to be reaching out to the national president of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, because this has gone on long enough. In addition to talking to whomever I know, and I know a few people in the Department of Justice in the United States government, because this is a travesty. And this is the type of thing where Black people, and let me be clear, audience, and I'm going to take my glasses off so you can hear me clearly. Black people say, hey, look, if I do good, I'm going to get arrested. If I do bad, I'm going to get arrested. Audience, let's stick behind Michael Thrash, because it sounds like you have done everything right, and the county of Abilene has done everything wrong. Thank you. Dr. Ashley?
Yes, I'm, again, just thinking about the frustration of the delay, and just wondering in these cases, what is the preparation like for June as far as keeping the, I guess I would say the emotional stamina and kind of bracketing? Like, what does that look like for the both of you? Yes.
For myself, it's stress.
Mm.
You have a lot of writing on these cases, and so adrenaline and stress basically is what gets me going and gets me, prepared. And so there's a lot of times we've had cases where, that's all we do. We know we go into trial and we will prepare for it, and you eat, sleep. That's all you do. And then on the day of trial, if it then gets reset at that time, it's a huge letdown, because you just have all that, built up, and then it's just, then all of a sudden it's gone, and in my mind is wasted. You're like, but so it's frustrating. In this, it is frustrating, but you do have, you have a fear when you go, because you want a great outcome, and you want to do right, and you want everything to go like you want it to. And so, and when those things don't happen, especially in court settings, it's frustrating. You're like, golly, but it's in this line of work, it's often so.
So there's a part of this where this in some ways is unfortunately an old friend that comes back. How do you rebound and kind of keep that momentum, get ready again for the fight? Because as Doug mentioned, sometimes there can be, I guess, a targeted or a motivation to wear someone down when they're fighting for justice. So what does that rebounding process look like for you, Matt?
In this case, a lot of times, especially when I read my notes in this case, when I watch the audio or the video, and it angers me, it upsets me. I think that I think so. A lot of that is that, and also, when you have someone that I believe Mr. Thrash is, I think he's 100% innocent. And when you have that feeling, it makes you work harder, because, you don't want anybody convicted for something they didn't do. And in this case, Mr. Thrash has everything to lose. He does. And so, that's a lot of stress, because I don't want him to lose his right to own and possess a firearm. He's something he has worked hard his entire life for, and it shouldn't be stripped away. And I don't want to be the cause of that. And so, that's another thing. So I worry about my clients. I care about them. I know Mr. Thrash, and, over our, I never knew him before, my involvement with him, but now, I've known him enough, and we talk, enough that, I consider him a friend. And so that's another motivation that makes me like, I don't want to let him down at all, so not every case is that way, but you do have some, and this is definitely one of those ones that, I'm motivated. I watch it, and I've played it over in my head a million times, and it angers me, because it can happen. It happened to Mr. Thrash, and no criminal history, but it happens to more people than it ever should. But so I. Motivated.
Mr. Thrash?
Yeah, the one thing I would like to say is that over these 3 years, it's like it takes a hold on your life, because everything I do now, I have to think about it. I really don't want to travel right now. Plus, it's put me in a financial situation where I can't do a lot of things, because I don't know if this is going to go to trial. I don't know how much more money it's going to cost me. So it's like my life is on a budget. Everything has to be done in a different manner now. It's because of this situation, and it's just not a good feeling. I'm gonna be honest with you, but I'm tired of crying over the situation. Now I'm ready to get mad and fight back. You go through all those emotions at first, but now I'm to the point where I'm mad now. I'm upset with it now.
Can I say something to the both of you? So one, Matt, what stands out to me having clients myself is we do bond and we get behind that cause that we're fighting for, and we take it home. And what I like in the attorney-client relationship with law, you get to be much more expressive and pour out that I got your back, and we're a team. You're a duo in this. And so just as a provider, as a clinician, it's heartwarming to see that. But I know that feeling of like you're taking it home and what it does for you. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And then also, Mr. Thrash, the tears are a part of the healing process. But I there's something that I want to validate that you just said, which is this idea of things are on, I'm going to say, pause. Things are on pause because right now, until you get some relief in this area, right? There are other things. It's like other dominoes to fall that are going to give you permission and freedom to let things flow. That's one of the things that trauma can take from us, is the freedom. For instance, I loved flying. I loved going to the store and crowds and concerts with no mask and just go and not have to plan out. Now I'm at the grocery store. I'm going to plan this out. I'm going to get out. And I know I'm not alone in that. I'm like, man, where's the spontaneity, right? Just this idea of like, and the reason why I don't want to make light of what's happening, but just to humanize the experience that when life hits, like with this pandemic or a personal trauma, it does change how we see the world and how we navigate it. But I want to let you know there's something called post-traumatic relief and growth. And there is relief. There is an after this. So sometimes when I'm in a fight, whether it's traumatic or just chronically stressful, I have to remind myself there's an after this. So I go athletics. That's just my background. I go athletics. And so it's just like, maybe with Kobe, I won't score 81 every day, but I can get the W. Or maybe this is halftime, like with Kansas when they were playing the Tar Heels and they're down by 15, but Bill Self is in that locker room and he's saying, you know what, we're down, but the fight's not over. And then the next thing you know, they come out of halftime. I know April 4th was the court date. April 4th for me, I had to de-stress from my day by watching the game. And I said, look at them coming back. Look at the underdog coming back. Look at them making it, again. So just thinking about, you may be crying right now. You may be down by 15. It may not seem like things are going to let up. But that fight, that comeback season, but I know it's hard. The efforts I can't imagine, and the journey and chronic trauma is something we don't talk about. But we look forward to not even just keeping our listeners updated on your story, but then the aftermath of having you come back with that championship that we're rooting that you get, that we want to rejoice in. But just that visualization of anger, sadness, crying, stress balls, anything to move your body, validating, talking to Matt and getting a validating voice of, this is unfair. I can't believe I'm going through this, gives humanity and perspective, and it's all in the healing. But I hear you saying, I'm mad and I'm ready to fight. I want and channeling that rightful anger into action.
Right.
Well, I'm back.
Hello.
Audience, we're having a heat wave out here in the Bay Area, which is tampering with our communication. But let me be clear, Michael Thrash and attorney Matt Hawkins, we support you, and we're going to be reaching out to Jessica Holiday again and working with her. The Black Business Roundtable is working with college students both from Stanford and UC Berkeley. I would like to offer this to you, Mr. Michael Thrash and Mr. Matt Hawkins, and specifically to you, Mr. Matt Hawkins, because Michael Thrash can't make a move without consulting his attorney. But we need to have some interns working with you to craft up wording such that we can submit to the NAACP, not just for the state of Texas, but for the United States of America. This is a gross injustice. And Mr. Matt Hawkins, I say this not because I don't know Michael Thrash. I say this because I do know this man. Michael Thrash, now don't get mad when I say this, but if anybody were to get in trouble, I never thought it would be you, because you never got in trouble.
Right.
You were of high integrity. You were of good character. You were from a good home background. For you to even get a CDL, commercial driver's license in Texas, that alone you had to pass a huge background check.
Yes.
To work in the, and as you can tell, I've done a little research on your background. To work for the Texas Correctional Correctional Institute?
TDCJ, Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
And how did you pass that background check, sir?
The same way I passed the one for my CDL, the same one I passed for my commercial handgun license, the same one I passed for the NAACP, the same one I passed for my attorney Matt when he got to know me.
Well, let's go back to the NAACP, because I'm going to be honing in on the national NAACP to start raining some terror down on them like they're raining on you. When the NAACP did a background check on you, what, if anything, did they find? Thank you, sir.
Absolutely nothing.
And can you elaborate, with your attorney's permission, what type of background investigation was done on you prior to Ms. Jessica Holiday saying that this is a travesty and a gross mischaracter and misjustice of that's going on with you right now, sir? Thank you.
She just vetted me. I was vetted. She looked, she checked into me. Before her, like I said, I've had several background checks. Like I said, to get a concealed handgun license, and also when I was driving trucks, to get a hazmat endorsement. And what that is, that's for me to be able to haul hazardous materials. You have to be vetted in that also. Otherwise, you can't haul chemicals, and you can't make the money on those loads. And I've always had the hazmat endorsement on my license. So I've been vetted several times throughout my lifetime.
So prior, audience, I want you to hear this. Prior to this mayhem that the Abilene County Sheriff or police have orchestrated against you, have you ever in your life had any interaction with the law enforcement? And not in just Texas, because you're from California, but from California and while you're in Texas. Thank you, sir.
Yes, I have. I've been pulled over before on a couple of different occasions where I've had guns pulled on me, where I've had to be laid down on the ground for a traffic infraction. And after there was no charges, I got a ticket for speeding, but that was all I got.
Okay, audience, I sit on the Community Policing Advisory Board for Oakland, California. Back in the 1990s, and you may remember this, Michael Thrash, because you were, I think, in California or on your way to Texas. They had a group of police officers called the Rough Riders.
Yes.
I had been pulled over 6 times. Each time they made me get out of the car with guns drawn and said, excuse me, audience, get your ass out of the car and lay down.
Yes.
And it was like 80, 90, 100 degrees outside. And this is the 6th time. Ran a check, et cetera, et cetera. I went down after the 6th time to the internal affairs for the Oakland Police Department and said, look, there's a group of officers out there who are harassing me. If I get pulled up, and I was a contractor for the city of Oakland, provided services, licensed contractor. I told the internal affairs lieutenant, I can't think of his name at this time, at this time, but I said, if I get pulled over again, I am suing Oakland. The officer or rank personnel gave me a card and says, if you get pulled, because I guess obviously he knew something was going on because he gave me the card. He said, if you get pulled over again, show them this card. I drove out of Oakland Police Department's parking lot. I was looking for police. They were looking for me. I couldn't wait to show my get out of jail free card. Within 2 weeks, audience, I had been pulled over by the same group of 6 rogue cops. Later, to move further into the story briefly, later they were all convicted for unethical behavior of police officers and were sued, and a bunch of men won lawsuits against this group of officers. And the city of Oakland has been under federal oversight from the Department of Justice for 20 years. This is the type of investigation we need to get going on in Abilene, Texas. And I'm going to move heaven and earth to get with the NAACP, get with Mr. Hawkins and any other group that is willing to address this unethical behavior that causes Black and brown men and women not only stress, but the inability to feel confident in our law enforcement. Now, law enforcement, let me be clear here. We have some great police people out here, great law enforcement people, but we have a small percentage that hides behind their badges to bully, intimidate, humiliate, destroy honest, hardworking citizens like Michael Thrash. And yes, audience, I know Michael Thrash, and I've known him since we were in elementary school at Howard Elementary in Oakland, California. Then we went to King Junior High School. Mike, you went to Skyline. I went to Castlemont. I think you went to I'm sure it was Skyline. I went to Castlemont. But I've never known you to jaywalk. You were, and Mike, don't take this personal. You know I love you, my brother. You were the squarest guy I knew back in school, and to hear you being treated like a convict, like a murderer, like a suspect, audience, is disgraceful. And it can happen to you. It can happen to you, Dr. Ashley. It can happen to anyone who is of dark skin, and you're supposed to be called an American. Mr. Hawkins, Mr. Thrash, we will continue to follow this story and bring justice to you, Mr. Thrash, because from what it sounds like to me, they're trying to break your back.
Yes.
But now you have other people, so they got to break all our backs. And I have a history, and audience, you can check it out. I don't mind taking on the big Goliath because I have a slingshot, and I only have one rock, and I don't. Dr. Ashley, can you talk as we are getting into the last minutes of this program? Can you give words of encouragement to those brothers and sisters? Because let me be clear, audience, our young Black men and women out there, they're not taking this crap. They're walking, they're voting. Can you give words of encouragement that can give our young people, our young audience, words of encouragement to use Michael Thrash as an example of how to get pulled over, harassed, and live to fight another day? Thank you, Dr. Ashley.
Sure. Well, that's I think a weighted question, because what we see is a consistency of character and a consistency of choices. But I think one of the things is highlighting Mr. Thrash's story to start conversations in homes about this. So there are various conversations that happen throughout development, and parents, that's up to your discretion. But there are certain conversations to have about, and given what we see on the news day to day or here, what to do, talking to your teenager, what to do when they're pulled over. Also, what to do if your teenager's getting in the car with someone else asking questions. So having discussions about also managing emotions, what to do. Again, here I go, a little sciencely, bear with me for a second. This frontal lobe of ours, where I call it the executive, but it's our executive functioning, involves all of our planning, our strategies. And this area is not fully developed until age 25, which is why car companies and rental car companies are like, oh no, they're extra, in cost or whatnot in trying to rent a car, because they're like, we want a less impulsive person, someone less inclined to engage in impulse decision making behind the wheel. I say that because, and with teenagers, there's called object permanence. So we don't always, young children and teenagers, understand how permanent some decisions are. And so helping your teen start to think through, okay, what would you do if you got pulled over? Okay, what if you got angry? But how can you hold that anger and not maybe say what comes to mind? How can you use call Siri to call me if you're pulled over and I'm not there, or ask for your parent? So kind of what we do in psychology, role playing, planning, coming up with a plan and a contingency plan about this. If you're going to let your teen go out, understanding, is everyone on the same accord if you get pulled over? I've been pulled over as a passenger, living in Oakland resident, but my parents moved to Contra Costa County. And I believe I've been pulled over riding while Black, driving while Black. It was very clear when we were by Black Hawk who we were. But I remembered being pulled over and a male friend driving, but he had conversations in preparation. Now, we were mad. We just happened to be two young people on the way to have a good time. Another time, there were more of us, 4 of us in the car enjoying ourselves. Both times, I still feel it in the pit of my stomach in talking about it. But we live to see another day. So strategies, having the conversations. I said managing emotions because I grew up with a mother for a teacher who taught me note writing and the power of using my words. Why do I say this? My mother using and writing letters to channel her frustration, as well as my father. And I do that too. Even students, if you don't like the assignments your teacher is giving it, do well. So I'm similar, Mike, where you talk about just, taking it out, that frustration. Why is that important? Voting, writing letters to your elected officials, advocating in certain ways. There's a way to get attention and the type of attention you want. But sometimes, again, it's surviving that moment. And let me just say this, it's not cowardice to survive the moment. I want to say that because we're having a discussion too, quick aside. in Black America about squares and what it means to be a man and masculinity and what to do. It's not cowardice to consider family. Someone wants me to come home safely. I have children that want to see me and hug me again. Oh, I would have said this. No, no, no. You have to think, what's the goal? What is the long-term goal?
Right.
And so that's in managing that emotions. We don't get places and wanting to say, you know what? So whether it's the stress ball or after a day where you want to say what you want to say, screaming into the pillow, exercising and walking, going to a therapist and letting it out, talk it to a trusted friend. It's okay. It's not cowardice to hold it and wait for a more appropriate time if it's aligned with your goal. So I just want to say that I know I said a lot there, but the conversations, the planning, and knowing that when you have a goal in mind or a purpose, there's certain things you're naturally just not going to do, right? You're not going to, hey, I have this scholarship. I don't want to put my scholarship at risk. I'm sorry. I'm going to adhere to the rules. When Mr. Thrash, you had all these accomplishments and all these background checks, but it's a culmination of day-to-day decision making. Day-to-day decision making that's led you to this position to have such a great reputation and character that it's going to withstand, unfortunately, the weapon that formed, but it's not going to prosper. But it's frustrating even when the weapon forms. But parents, have these conversations. Help people with decision making, impulse control. And even if for instance, if your child sees you making a mistake, you said something, you know what? There's another way mom or dad could have handled this. I'm frustrated, but let me tell you, I want to show you a different way.
I agree.
Michael Thrash, with the permission of your attorney, who is, in my opinion, one of the best attorneys, not only in the state of Texas, but in the United States of America. Can you explain, as we have 14 minutes, and I'm asking you to use at least 6 minutes or 7, how you were able to stay alive, which appears to be a challenging moment with these police officers, sheriffs, law enforcement, who were determined to destroy an innocent man's life and 60 years of honest, hardworking, being a good American citizen. Take 6 minutes and tell our audience how you survived the moment before we close this out, sir, with your attorney's permission. But let this audience know how you are here today, how you are here to fight another day. Thank you, sir.
I think, first of all, I just had to use my head, because I knew when they were pulling me over, even as soon as they hit the red lights on me, the red and blue lights, I immediately went into, okay, what do I need to do to take the edge off of how they feel when they come up? And that's why before the officer got even to the window, I already had my concealed handgun license and driver's license in hand. And I put the concealed handgun license on top of the driver's license, so they would know that immediately. And if they asked me, did I have a weapon on me, I was going to let them know immediately that I did. And just to elaborate on something the doctor said, the one thing that I've really learned over these 3 years, I'm never going to be disrespectful or rude to the police, but I will never, ever tell the truth about a story. I'm keeping my mouth quiet. I'm not saying anything, because they will try to change the narrative. I told them the story, what I was doing, and all they tried to do was say, well, that can't be right. You can't be doing that. And I've learned from that, keep my mouth shut, don't say a word, just answer their questions. If they ask you where you coming from, that's not irrelevant to this stop. Where are you going? That's not irrelevant to this stop. I'll talk to you about this stop and this stop only.
Yes. Asserting those boundaries.
Yes.
Audience, let's be clear here. Take this story as an example of how to stay alive first. Second, law enforcement, please use this as an example of how this could have went bad and this man could be dead and not here to argue his case.
Right.
NAACP, both in Texas and the national NAACP, I'm going to be reaching out and seeing if we can show some highlight and get some things going on down there in Texas, because at the end of the day, Michael Thrash, you have, and let me ask you, attorney, you have tapes of this whole situation. Is that correct?
Well, my attorney does.
Sure
and
do.
Since we're working with less than 10 minutes, can you wrap it up by telling us what, in a nutshell, those tapes depicted of this traffic stop of Mr. Michael Thrash, where Mr. Michael Thrash should be arresting the police right now? Thank you.
Right. The videos that we have are from the officers' dash cams and then from their respective vest cams, and they compile that together. We have, I think we have 6 CDs, if I'm not mistaken, and it basically it's different officers. You see their role in it as they go, but the biggest concern is to when Michael was approached by the officer, he was respectful. Very courteous to him, handed them driver's license just like he's supposed to, insurance, and they asked him questions, obviously that he wasn't the owner of the vehicle, and he did explain that he was borrowing the vehicle, and he's exactly right when he let them know what he was doing, and of course immediately they didn't care about any of that. They immediately went back with his license and powwowed in a circle to try to figure out how to get a search and how to get, because they automatically, based on just the license plate reader, they didn't listen to him at all, and didn't, when they realized that he wasn't the owner of the vehicle, that should have been probably the end of it. Hey, we pulled you over. We thought your license plate was too dim, and here you go. But instead, they, got together and then started powwowing. And then once they got a reason to get into the vehicle, they, then that's when they start saying they can, smell the weed, and there is no weed. In fact, no weed was ever found ever. And even the drug dog comes into the vehicle and doesn't even hit where they're trying to say that, oh, I can smell it, no smell, no hit. And if the dog ever hit, never saw it hit anywhere else again. So I'm not sure how it hit on anything in the first place. But then it's real aggravating to see these officers do everything they can to get the money. And they start talking about how once they discover that Mr. Thrash has money, and he gives them a reason why he has it and what he's doing with it, which really it's none of their damn business. But that being said, apparently in America, you can't carry your own cash. And if the officers deem it to be too expensive or too much cash, according to them, not you, they'll take it. And that's exactly what they did in this case. And, hear them say they're going to scrape the bills to get the drugs, because every bill has residue. Just about every United States currency has cocaine residue, has residue on it, and there's been tests to show that, U.S. currency is dirty. It just is, but to hear the officer say they're going to scrape it so they can say that he's got a possession of a drug to be able to justify taking his money. And then the craziest thing that even more angers me is after all this is done, they take this man's money, they take this man's gun, his concealed carry license, and his pocket knife. And then after all of that, and they tell him he's a felon, he's going to be charged with these things. Then they let him go. And then when after the very end, they're still talking, and they make a statement at the very end saying he probably won't even come back for this money. And that's exactly. And so when you see that, it angers you because, it shouldn't have gone down that way. You shouldn't have cops out there fabricating or trying to make something when it's not there. And they did it because they benefit themselves with that money. If they can successfully seize it, they get to benefit because they get to use that money to buy whatever stuff they need to help them with their job. And I think that's a flawed system in itself, because I think if an agency is going to be the one to take your money from you, I don't think that money should go directly to them. I think they have a conflict of interest by doing that. But I'm sorry, I get in my soapbox because I do get angry when I see that, because a lot of that stuff that went down, it's not made up. It's on the video, it's on the audio, and you can see these officers and how they're thinking to get to how can we steal this man's money without it being stealing. And that's.
Can I just say something 1 second? Mr. Thrash, I saw you stretch, and I want us to take all of us a deep breath together. Okay, can you will you guys oblige me with that? So just on 3, we're gonna take a deep breath, but we're gonna put our shoulders by our ears, and then we're gonna drop them together. Okay, so on 3, deep breath in. Hold it, and drop those shoulders. We're going to do that again. Deep breath in. Ooh, and release. And one more, and then we're going to really drop the shoulders on this one. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, good neck roll. Deep breath in. And 1, 2, 3.
Dr.
Because
Ashley,
we are grounded. Yes. Go ahead,
Mr. Thrash, Mr. Hawkins, as we wrap up this show, I have to let the audience leave on this note. In 60 seconds or less, can you tell our audience how the police department went to this man's house in his neighborhood and arrested him? And we're going to close out the show on that note.
You want to tell him, Michael?
Yeah. First of all, I want to say this. I'm not mad at the Lubbock police for coming to my house, because all they're doing is following what Abilene said, and they don't know. They all they do is look at what they wrote as far as a gun and everything. But with that being said, it was still very, very just. I mean, it just made me feel low, and to have to deal with my neighbors and wondering who's looking at this whole thing, for me to try to build my life and do it the right way and have a home and do the things I'm supposed to do, and then to be pulled out of my home that way, that was the worst. That was the worst of everything.
Audience, I wanted to end this story, end this show on that note. Mr. Hawkins, Mr. Thrash, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And
thank you for having us.
I sincerely mean we will be contacting NAACP, both in Texas and the national, and we're going to be calling the feds and sending this tape and asking them to review the tapes of the police officers, cam body recordings. Thank you, gentlemen. Michael Thrash, stay strong, brother.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you to our weekly guest, Dr. Ashley Coleman, Doctor of Psychology. Returning later in April is Janani Ramachandran Esquire, a grassroots fighter of human rights and candidate running for Oakland City Council District 4, and kicks off her campaign. See more of Janani via her new website, Janani4, and that's FOR, Oakland.com, or on Instagram at Janani4, and that's the numeral 4, Oakland. Thank you, Michael Thrash. And we got you, man. This is Texas, Abilene. We're not going away. We're going to be here until you give this man his money back and pay for his attorney fees. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all for your appearance on the show today, and we hope that you will come back and continue to educate our growing audience in the future. Please remember to donate to Carlton's Legal Defense if the story has moved your heart. A special shout out to Donnie Glover of BlackUSA.News and current sponsor Soul Slice, website soulslice.com. Restaurant and catering with Chef Carter Lewis, Magnolia Engineering and Construction. Website Magnolia Engineering and Construction. To join our Black Business Roundtable advertising family or to be a possible guest on the show, reach us via our email bBRT2021@hotmail.com. Include your company name, address, website, company phone number, and social media page info to our email address BBRT2021@hotmail.com. We also have a network of shows hosted by Mr. Donnie Glover, such as Chap and Friends on Monday, Party Marty Let's Talk on Tuesday, Black USA Crypto News with Kamal Hubbard on Friday, and Sunday, 60 Minutes in Black USA with Michael Haney. So be sure to check out these Black voices and guiding lights in our community. Audience, thank you for tuning in. And remember, together we can listen, we can learn, and we can share, because I know you care. This is Doug Blacksher and my ride or die sister, Dr. Ashley Coleman of the Black Business Roundtable. God bless. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week, and good night.
I guess.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins, Mr. Thrash.